My parents disowned me when I was 19. They told me I was irresponsible, reckless, and would never amount to anything. My mother looked me in the eye and said, "You are no longer our daughter." 20 years later, I'm the one who decides if they'll eat each month. I'm the one who owns the roof over their heads. And they have no idea. Before I tell you how I became the silent puppet master of their entire retirement, let me know in the comments section if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. And if you want to hear how this all unfolded, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because what happened next changed everything they thought they knew about me. My name is Naomi, and I'm 39 years old. For 2 decades, I carried the weight of my parents' rejection like a stone in my chest. But I didn't just survive. I thrived. I built an empire they knew nothing about. And when they lost everything, when they were desperate and broken, I was the one waiting in the shadows. This is the story of how the daughter they threw away became the only thing standing between them and complete ruin. If you've ever wanted justice for being dismissed, stay with me. You're going to love this story. I grew up in a small town in Ohio called Maplewood. It's one of those places where everyone knows everyone, where your reputation is built in church pews and PTA meetings, and where my parents, Richard and Diane Fletcher, were considered pillars of the community. My father was a high school principal. My mother taught piano lessons out of our home. They were respected, admired, and deeply, deeply concerned with appearances. I was their only child. And from the moment I could understand words, I knew I was a disappointment. It wasn't that I was a bad kid. I wasn't doing drugs or sneaking out or failing school. I was just different. I asked too many questions. I challenged things. I wanted to be an artist, a musician, maybe a writer. I didn't want the life they had planned for me, the safe, predictable path of college, marriage, teaching job, 2.5 kids, and a house 3 blocks from theirs. When I was 17, I told them I didn't want to go to the state university they had chosen for me. I wanted to move to Chicago and study at an art institute. I had saved money from my part-time job at the local diner. I had a plan. My father's face turned red. I remember that moment so clearly. We were sitting in the dining room. The late afternoon sun was coming through the lace curtains my mother loved. The house smelled like lemon polish. Everything looked perfect. But the air was thick with his anger. "Absolutely not," he said, his voice low and hard. "You will go to Ohio State. You will study education or business. You will not throw your life away on some foolish dream." My mother nodded, her hands folded in her lap. She always agreed with him. Always. "But it's my life," I said. My voice was shaking. I was 17 and terrified, but I was also desperate. "I've saved the money. I can do this." "With what?" my father snapped. "Your waitressing tips? Naomi, you are a child. You don't understand the real world. This art nonsense is irresponsible. It's selfish. And we will not support it." "I'm not asking you to support it," I said. "I'm just asking you to let me try." No. That was it. And that's final. I applied to the Art Institute anyway. I did it in secret, using my guidance counselor's address so my parents wouldn't see the letters. And in March of my senior year, I got in. Full acceptance. They even offered me a small scholarship based on my portfolio. I was so happy. I remember holding that letter in my hands, sitting in my car in the school parking lot, and crying. Not sad tears. Relief and hope. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could have the life I wanted. I brought the letter home that night. I waited until after dinner. I laid it on the table in front of them. "I got in," I said. My voice was quiet but steady. "I got into the Chicago Art Institute. I'm going." My father didn't even pick up the letter. He just stared at me. His jaw was tight. His eyes were cold. "No," he said. "You're not." "Dad, I'm 18 in 2 months. I can make my own choice." "Not under this roof, you can't." He stood up. He was tall, over 6 feet, and he used his height to intimidate. It had always worked on me. If you walk out that door to chase this ridiculous dream, you are not welcome back. Do you understand me? My mother finally spoke. Her voice was soft and sad, like she was already mourning me. Naomi, we're trying to protect you. The world is hard. Art doesn't pay bills. You'll end up struggling, alone, with nothing. We're your parents. We know what's best. You don't, I whispered. You don't know me at all. My father's voice was like a hammer. Then leave. If you're so sure, if you're so smart, go. But don't come crawling back when you fail. Because we won't be here. I looked at my mother. I was begging her with my eyes. Say something. Stop him. Tell him he's wrong. She looked down at her hands. I left that night. I packed a duffel bag with my clothes, my sketchbooks, and a few savings bonds from my grandmother who had passed away when I was 12. I walked out the front door, and my father didn't say a word. My mother stood in the hallway, her arms wrapped around herself, crying silently. I was 18 years old. And I was alone. The first 2 years in Chicago were the hardest years of my life. I lived in a tiny studio apartment in a building that smelled like mold and cigarette smoke. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing at a diner, cleaning offices at night, and doing freelance graphic design work for $20 a logo. I went to classes during the day. I was exhausted all the time. There were nights I ate ramen noodles for dinner and breakfast because that's all I could afford. There were nights I sat on the floor of my apartment and cried because I was so tired, so lonely, so scared that maybe my parents were right. Maybe I was irresponsible. Maybe I was a failure. But I didn't quit. I called home once, about 6 months after I left. I don't know why. Maybe I was homesick. Maybe I wanted to hear my mother's voice. Maybe I thought enough time had passed that they would soften. My father answered. Hi, Dad, I said. My voice cracked. It's me. It's Naomi. There was a long silence. We don't have a daughter named Naomi, he said. And then he hung up. I stood there in the phone booth outside my apartment building, holding the receiver, listening to the dial tone. I felt something inside me break. Not my resolve. Something softer. Something that I had been hoping for. I never called again. By the time I was 23, things started to change. I graduated from the Art Institute with honors. I had built a small portfolio of design work. And I got hired by a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't art. But it paid well. And I was good at it. I worked my way up. I learned everything I could. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I took every opportunity, every extra project, every chance to prove myself. And by the time I was 28, I was the creative director. By 30, I was a partner. By 35, I had saved enough money to start my own firm, a boutique agency specializing in brand revitalization for struggling businesses. I was good at taking something broken and making it valuable again. I understood failure. I understood fighting back. My firm grew fast. We worked with small companies, mom-and-pop shops, family businesses that were on the edge of collapse. I helped them rebrand, restructure, and survive. And I made a lot of money doing it. I bought a condo in downtown Chicago. I traveled. I built a life that was mine, that I was proud of. And I did it all without them. But I never forgot. I never forgot my father's voice saying, "We don't have a daughter." I never forgot my mother turning away. And I never forgot the night they disowned me. I didn't think about revenge. Not really. I was too busy building my life. But I did think about them. I wondered if they ever regretted it. I wondered if they ever looked for me, if they ever Googled my name, if they ever felt even a flicker of remorse. I found out the answer when I was 37. I was in my office, late on a Thursday night. My assistant had left hours ago. I was reviewing a pitch deck for a new client when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but it had an Ohio area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Is this Naomi Fletcher? The voice was male, older but unfamiliar. Yes. Who's this? My name is Carl Henning. I'm a financial advisor in Maplewood, Ohio. I'm calling because I've been working with your parents, Richard and Diane Fletcher, and I believe you might be able to help them with a very serious situation. My hand tightened on the phone. I'm sorry, what? Your parents are facing foreclosure on their home. They've fallen behind on their mortgage payments, and the bank is moving forward with repossession. They're also dealing with significant credit card debt and medical bills. I've been trying to help them restructure, but frankly, their situation is quite dire. I sat there, stunned. Why are you calling me? Because they listed you as their next of kin on some old paperwork. I found your contact information through a private database. I know this might be unexpected, but they're in real trouble. They could lose everything. I should have felt something. Sympathy, sadness or fear. But all I felt was cold and sharp curiosity. How much do they owe? Between the mortgage, credit cards, and medical debt, roughly $230,000. I let out a slow breath. That's a lot. It is. And given their ages, your father is 71, your mother is 69, they have very few options. Their pensions are small. They have no savings. If they lose the house, they'll have nowhere to go. Why doesn't my father just call me himself? I asked, my voice flat. There was a pause. To be honest, Miss Fletcher, I don't think he knows I'm calling you. Your mother gave me your name when I asked if they had any family who might be able to help. But your father, he's a proud man. Yeah, I said quietly. He is. Will you help them? I stared out the window of my office at the glittering Chicago skyline. 20 years since they'd thrown me out. Let me think about it, I said. Give me your number. He did. I wrote it down. And then I hung up. I sat there in the dark for a long time. And then, slowly, a plan started to form in my head. I didn't call Carl Henning back right away. I needed time. Time to think. Time to feel. Time to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. Part of me, the part that was still that 18-year-old girl holding a duffel bag, wanted to laugh. I wanted to say, you made your choice. Now live with it. But another part of me, the part that had spent 20 years building something from nothing, the part that understood what it felt like to be desperate and alone, that part hesitated. I didn't owe them anything. They had made that clear. But I wanted to know. I wanted to see them. I wanted to understand how they had ended up here, broke and desperate, after a lifetime of respectability. So I did what I do best. I researched. I hired a private investigator. A good one. Discreet. I told him I needed a full financial and personal background report on Richard and Diane Fletcher of Maplewood, Ohio. It took him 2 weeks. What he sent me was a thick file, and reading it felt like opening a window into a life I'd never known. My father had retired from his principal position 5 years ago. His pension was modest, about $32,000 a year. My mother's income from piano lessons had dried up as she aged and her arthritis made it hard to play. They were living primarily on Social Security and my father's pension. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the spending. For years, my parents had been living beyond their means. They'd taken out a home equity line of credit to renovate their house, a project that cost nearly $80,000. They'd bought a new car. They'd taken vacations. They'd kept up appearances. And then my father got sick. 3 years ago, he had a heart attack. The medical bills, even with Medicare, had been crushing. The medications, the follow-up treatments, the specialist visits. They'd maxed out credit cards. They'd borrowed from friends. My mother had tried to go back to teaching lessons, but her hands were too stiff. She couldn't play anymore. They'd fallen behind on the mortgage. Missed payments turned into late fees. Late fees turned into default notices. And now, the bank was foreclosing. The investigator also included some personal details. My father's health was declining. He'd had a second, smaller heart attack 6 months ago. He was on a strict medication regimen. My mother was his primary caretaker. They had no other family, no siblings, no close relatives, and they were about to lose their home. I sat in my condo, the file spread across my dining table, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not forgiveness. Not love. But pity. They were old. They were sick. And they were paying for a lifetime of pride and bad decisions. I called Carl Henning. It's Naomi Fletcher, I said when he answered. Miss Fletcher. Thank you for calling back. I've looked into their situation, I said. And I'm willing to help. But not the way you think. I'm listening. I'm not going to just pay off their debt. I'm not going to write them a check and walk away. If I'm going to help them, I'm going to do it my way. And they're not going to know it's me. There was a pause. I'm not sure I understand. I'm going to buy their house, I said. The bank is foreclosing, right? So I'll buy it before the auction. I'll pay off the mortgage, and I'll become their landlord. I'll let them stay, but they'll pay rent. A low rent, something they can afford on their fixed income. But they'll never know I'm the one who owns it. Why? Because I want them to feel what I felt, I said, my voice cold and steady. I want them to know what it's like to be dependent on someone else's mercy. I want them to live in that house, the house they're so proud of, and know that they don't own it anymore, that someone else holds their future. And I want to watch it. Carl Henning was quiet for a long moment. That's quite a plan. Can you make it happen? I can. I'd need to set up a limited liability company to purchase the property. Your name would be hidden behind the corporate structure. They'd never know. Good. Do it. And Carl. Yes. I want regular reports. I want to know how they're doing, what they're saying and how they're coping. Just give me a report on everything. Understood. One more thing, I said. The rent. I want it to be just high enough that it's a strain. Not impossible, but hard. I want them to feel it every single month. Miss Fletcher. Do it, I said. Or I'll find someone else who will. He agreed. 6 weeks later, I owned my parents' house. The foreclosure process was stopped. The bank was paid in full. And a letter was sent to my parents from a property management company informing them that their home had been purchased by an LLC, and they were now tenants. The rent was set at $900 a month. For most people, that's reasonable. But for 2 people living on Social Security and a small pension, it was a stretch. Carl sent me updates. My parents were shocked and confused. My father had tried to find out who owned the LLC, but the legal structure I'd built was airtight. He hit dead ends. My mother cried. She told a neighbor she felt like they'd lost their home even though they were still living in it. I read those reports in my condo, a glass of wine in my hand, and I felt a dark, cold satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. I wanted more. Over the next year, I tightened the screws slowly, methodically. I had the property management company send reminders when rent was even a day late. I charged late fees. Small ones, $25, but enough to sting. I had the company send notices about minor lease violations. The lawn wasn't mowed on time. There was a small crack in the driveway that needed repair. Nothing major. Just constant, grinding pressure. I wanted them to feel watched, judged and powerless. And they did. Carl's reports told me everything. My father was furious. He ranted to neighbors about the vulture landlord who had bought their house. My mother was quiet and sad. She told a friend she felt like they were living in a prison. Good. Now you know how I felt. But even as I watched them struggle, something strange started to happen. I started to feel empty. The satisfaction I'd expected, the vindication, it was hollow. Every report I read, every update about their stress and fear, it didn't make me feel powerful. It made me feel tired. I was 38 years old. I had a successful business. I had money, freedom, and respect. I had everything I'd fought for. But I was alone. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have close friends. I'd built walls around myself so high that no one could get in. And late at night, in my beautiful condo, I'd sit by the window and wonder what the hell I was doing. Was this justice? Or was it just cruelty? I didn't have an answer. And then, one night, everything changed. I got a call from Carl Henning. It was late, almost 11 p.m. Naomi, I'm sorry to call so late. What's wrong? It's your father. He had another heart attack. He's in the hospital and it's serious. My heart stopped. Is he going to die? I don't know. Your mother is with him. She's not doing well. But she's terrified. I sat down, my hands shaking. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you should know. And because... He hesitated. Because I think you need to decide what you really want here. I hung up. I sat there in the dark, my mind racing. My father was dying. The man who had disowned me, who had erased me, who had thrown me away like I was nothing, was lying in a hospital bed, and he might not survive the night. And I realized something. I didn't want him to die. Not because I loved him. I wasn't sure I did anymore. But because if he died now, he'd never know. He'd never know what I'd become. He'd never know that I was the one holding his life in my hands. And I wanted him to know. I wanted them both to know. My father didn't die that night. He survived. Barely. Carl called me the next morning to tell me he was stable but weak. The doctors said he'd need months of recovery. He'd need help and more care. And my mother couldn't do it alone. I made a decision. I called Carl. I want you to arrange something for me. What do you need? I want to hire a home health aide for my father. Someone to come to the house 3 times a week. Someone good. I'll pay for it. That's very generous. I'm not doing it to be generous, I said. I'm doing it because I want them to wonder who's helping them. I want them to feel grateful to a stranger. And I want to control the narrative. What do you mean? I mean I'm going to start giving them little gifts. Little lifelines. Anonymously. And I'm going to make sure they know someone is watching them. Someone who has the power to help or hurt them. Naomi, I'm not sure that's. Just do it, I said. He did. A week later, a home health aide named Patricia started visiting my parents 3 times a week. She was kind, professional, and expensive. My parents didn't know who was paying for her. Carl told them it was a charity program through the hospital. They believed him. I also started sending small checks. $50 here. $100 there. Always anonymously. Always with a note. From a friend. My mother told a neighbor she thought it was someone from their church. My father didn't care. He just cashed the checks. I watched from a distance, pulling strings, controlling their lives, and they had no idea. But I wasn't satisfied. I wanted them to know it was me. I wanted the reveal. I wanted the moment where they realized that the daughter they'd thrown away was the only reason they were surviving. I just had to wait for the right time. That time came 6 months later. I got a call from Carl. Naomi, your parents are 3 months behind on rent. My heart skipped. What? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I've been trying to work with them. Your father's medical bills have been piling up again. They can't keep up. How much do they owe? $2,700. I paused. What happens if they don't pay? The standard lease terms apply. After 90 days of non-payment, we can begin eviction proceedings. Do it, I said. Naomi. Send them the notice. I want them to know they're about to lose everything. Again. Carl hesitated, but he did it. 3 days later, my parents received an official notice of eviction. They had 30 days to pay the full amount owed or vacate the property. Carl sent me a copy of my mother's reaction. She called the property management company, crying, begging for more time. My father tried to negotiate, but his pride made him angry. He yelled at the property manager. He threatened to call a lawyer. None of it mattered. The clock was ticking. And I waited. I waited for them to break. I waited for them to be desperate enough that they'd have no choice but to reach out. And then, on day 23, my mother did something I didn't expect. She posted on Facebook. I'd been monitoring their social media for months through a fake account. I watched their lives play out in filtered photos and vague status updates. But this post was different. It was raw and vulnerable. I don't usually ask for help, it read. But my husband and I are facing a very difficult time. We're about to lose our home. If anyone can help, even with prayers, we'd be so grateful. God bless. The post had dozens of comments. Friends from church offering prayers. Neighbors expressing shock. And then, buried in the comments, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A comment from a woman named Susan Gardner. Have you tried reaching out to your daughter? My mother's response, we don't have a daughter. I stared at those words. 20 years later, and she still couldn't admit I existed. Something inside me snapped. Not in anger. In clarity. I didn't want revenge anymore. I didn't want them to suffer. I wanted them to see me, to acknowledge me, to know what they'd done. And I was going to make sure they did. I called Carl. I'm coming to Maplewood. When? Tomorrow. Set up a meeting with my parents. Tell them a representative from the property management company wants to discuss their situation in person. Tell them there might be a way to resolve this. Are you sure? I'm sure. It's time. The drive from Chicago to Maplewood took 4 hours. I'd made this drive once before, 20 years ago, in the opposite direction, with everything I owned in a duffel bag. Now I was driving a Mercedes. I was wearing a designer suit. I had a lawyer on speed dial and enough money in the bank to buy their entire street if I wanted to. I wasn't the scared girl anymore. I was the woman who had survived. Carl met me at a coffee shop on the edge of town. He handed me a folder with all the paperwork. They'll be at the house at 2 p.m., he said. They think they're meeting with the property manager. Good. Naomi, are you sure you want to do this? I looked at him. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. At 1:55 p.m., I pulled up to the house. It looked the same. The same white siding. The same black shutters. The same flower beds my mother used to tend. But it felt different. Smaller. I sat in my car for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, and my heart pounding. And then I got out. I walked up the front steps. The same steps I'd run down as a child. The same steps I'd walked down for the last time 20 years ago. I knocked. My mother opened the door. She looked older. So much older. Her hair was gray. Her face was lined and her hands shook slightly. She looked at me, and for a moment, there was nothing. No recognition. And then her eyes went wide. Naomi, she screamed. The word hung in the air between us. My mother's face went pale. Her hand gripped the doorframe like she might fall. Naomi, she whispered again, as if saying my name would make me disappear. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my leather portfolio in my hand, and looked at her. Hello, Mother. Behind her, I heard heavy footsteps. My father appeared in the hallway. He looked worse than my mother. Thinner. Grayer, and his face was gaunt, his eyes sunken. When he saw me, he stopped. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my father's face hardened. What are you doing here? I'm here for the meeting, I said calmly. May I come in? My mother looked back at my father, confused. Richard, did you call her? No. His voice was sharp. He looked at me with suspicion and something else. Fear. How did you know we were? I'm the representative from the property management company, I said. I held up the folder. I'm here to discuss your lease. My father's face went from pale to red. You? You're the... I'm the landlord, I said. I own this house. I've owned it for a year and a half. My mother made a small, choked sound. She stepped back, her hand over her mouth. My father's jaw clenched. This is some kind of sick joke. It's not a joke, I said. May I come in? Or would you rather have this conversation on the porch where your neighbors can hear? My mother, always concerned with appearances, stepped aside. I walked into the house. It smelled the same. Like lemon polish and old wood. The furniture was the same. The family photos on the walls were the same. Except there were no photos of me. I'd been erased. I sat down on the couch. The same couch I'd sat on the night I told them I was leaving. I set my portfolio on the coffee table and looked at them. My mother sat in the armchair across from me. She looked like she might be sick. My father stood. He refused to sit. He refused to be on my level. What do you want? He asked. His voice was cold and hard. The same voice he'd used to disown me. I want to talk about your lease, I said. You're 3 months behind on rent. That's $2,700. According to the terms of your lease, I have the right to begin eviction proceedings. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Naomi, please. Don't, my father snapped at her. He looked at me. You did this on purpose. You bought this house just to torture us. No, I said. I bought this house to save you. The bank was foreclosing. You were going to lose everything. I stopped that. And then you made us tenants, my father said. You made us pay rent in our own home. It's not your home, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was like ice. You lost it. You lost it because you spent money you didn't have on things you didn't need. You lost it because you were too proud to ask for help. And now you're angry at me because I'm the one who kept you from being homeless. My mother was crying now, silent tears running down her face. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this? I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had given birth to me, who had raised me, who had stood in the hallway and watched me leave without saying a word. Because you disowned me, I said. Because when I needed you most, when I was 18 and scared and trying to build a life, you told me I was dead to you. And I wanted you to know what that felt like. My father's face was red now, his hands clenched into fists. You were irresponsible. You were throwing your life away on some ridiculous dream. I wasn't, I said. I built a life. A good life. I own a successful company. I have a condo in Chicago. I have money, respect, everything you said I'd never have. And I did it without you. Then why are you here? My father shouted. If you're so successful, why come back? Why do this? Because I wanted you to see me, I said. My voice cracked, just slightly. I wanted you to know that the daughter you threw away became someone. That I survived. That I thrived. And that now, you need me. You need me to let you stay in this house. You need me to not evict you. You need me. The silence that followed was crushing. My mother was sobbing now, her face in her hands. My father just stared at me, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. So what now? He finally asked. You kick us out? You get your revenge. I opened the folder. I pulled out a document and set it on the coffee table. No, I said. I'm giving you a choice. My mother looked up, her eyes red and swollen. What choice? I'm forgiving the back rent, I said. All of it. $2,700. Gone. My father frowned but was suspicious. Why? Because I'm also lowering your rent, I said. To $400 a month. That's what you can afford on your fixed income. And I'm paying for your home health aid. And I'm setting up a fund to cover your medical expenses. My mother gasped. Naomi. But, I continued, my voice firm, there's a condition. What condition? My father asked. I looked him in the eye. You acknowledge me. You tell people I'm your daughter. You put my photo back on the wall. You don't have to love me. You don't have to like me. But you acknowledge that I exist. My mother started crying harder. My father looked like I'd slapped him. That's it, he asked. That's what you want. That's what I want, I said. And if you can't do that, if you can't admit that you have a daughter, then I'll start the eviction process tomorrow. You'll have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. And I'll sell this house to someone who doesn't care about your history or your pride. My mother looked at my father, her eyes pleading. My father's face was a storm of emotions. Anger, pride and shame. And then, slowly, he sat down. He sat on the couch, his hands on his knees, and he looked at the floor. We were wrong, he said. His voice was quiet and broken. We were wrong to do what we did. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I thought we were protecting you, he continued. I thought you'd fail. I thought you'd come back, and we'd say we told you so, and you'd go to college like we wanted. But you didn't. You didn't come back. Because you told me not to, I said. I know. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. I know. And I was too proud to admit I was wrong. I was too proud to find you. And every year that went by, It got harder. Until it felt like it was too late. My mother was sobbing openly now. My mother was sobbing openly now. I wanted to find you, she said, her voice breaking. Every birthday. Every Christmas. I wanted to pick up the phone. But your father said. Don't blame me, my father said, but his voice had no strength. You didn't fight for her either. They looked at each other, and I saw it. 20 years of regret. 20 years of pride and stubbornness and guilt, all crashing down at once. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something softer than the cold anger I'd carried for so long. I'm not asking you to love me, I said quietly. I'm not asking you to be the parents you never were. I'm just asking you to admit that you had a daughter. That you have a daughter. That I'm real. My mother stood up. She walked over to me, slowly, like she was afraid I'd disappear. She knelt down in front of me, her old knees cracking, and she took my hands. Her hands were cold and shaking. You're real, she whispered. You're here. You're my daughter. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked down at her, this woman who had failed me in every way that mattered, and I felt the tears come. Hot and fast, years of them, all at once. I didn't hug her. I wasn't ready for that. But I didn't pull my hands away. My father stood up. He walked over to the mantel, where all the family photos sat in their neat frames. He picked up a photo of him and my mother at some church event, and he moved it to the side. There was a gap now. An empty space. He looked at me. Do you have a picture? I reached into my bag. I'd brought one, just in case. A professional headshot from my company website. Me in a blazer, smiling, and confident. I handed it to him. He looked at it for a long time. Then he put it in the empty space on the mantel, right in the center. There, he said. His voice was rough. That's where it should have been all along. I stood up. My mother was still on the floor, crying. I'll have the new lease drawn up, I said, my voice steady. $400 a month. And I'll make sure Patricia continues to come. But I need you to sign something. I pulled out another document. It's an acknowledgement. It says that you recognize me as your daughter and that you agree to the new terms. And it says that you'll put my contact information on all your emergency forms. I'll be your next of kin. My father took the document. He read it, his jaw tight. Then he picked up a pen from the side table and signed it. He handed it to my mother. She signed it too, her handwriting shaky. I took the document and put it back in my folder. I'll be in touch, I said. If you need anything, you call Carl Henning. He'll contact me. Will we see you again? My mother asked, her voice small. I looked at her. I don't know. Maybe, but not yet. I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when my father spoke. Naomi. I turned. He was standing in the middle of the living room. This old, broken man who had once been so powerful in my life. You were right, he said. You were right to leave. You were right to build your life. And I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. I nodded. I know. And then I walked out. The drive back to Chicago felt different. I felt more lighter. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. And maybe, just a little bit, I felt free. Over the next few months, things changed slowly. My parents paid their rent on time. $400 every month, like clockwork. Carl sent me updates. My father's health stabilized. My mother started going to a support group for caregivers at their church. And one day, about 6 months after our meeting, I got a text message from an unknown number. Is this Naomi? I stared at it. Yes. Who is this? It's your mother. Carl gave me your number. I hope that's okay. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. It's okay. There was a long pause. Then, I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. And to tell you that we talk about you now. To people. We tell them we have a daughter. That you're successful. That we're so proud of. I read the message 3 times. Are you? I typed. Proud. Another pause. Yes. We are. Even if we don't deserve to be. I sat there in my condo, looking out at the city lights, and I realized something. I didn't need them to deserve it. I just needed them to say it. Thank you, I typed back. We didn't become close. We didn't have tearful reunions or holiday dinners. But we texted. Sometimes. Every few weeks. Simple things. Updates about my father's health. Questions about my work. And one day, a year after our meeting, my mother sent me a photo. It was the mantle in their living room. My photo was still there, in the center, surrounded by other family pictures. And next to it was a new frame. A picture of me as a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, smiling at the camera. I found this in a box in the attic, the text said. I forgot we had it. I'm sorry I forgot. I stared at that photo for a long time. The little girl in the picture had no idea what was coming. No idea that she'd be thrown away, that she'd have to fight for everything, that she'd spend 20 years proving herself to people who didn't deserve her. But she survived. And she won. Not because she destroyed them, but because she became someone they couldn't ignore. Someone they couldn't erase. I texted back, I'm glad you found it. 2 years later, I got a call at 3 in the morning. It was my mother. Naomi, it's your father. He's gone. He had another heart attack. The paramedics couldn't save him. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Where are you? At the hospital. I'm alone. Carl is out of town. I didn't know who else to call. I'm coming, I said. I'll be there in 4 hours. You don't have to. I'm coming. I drove through the night. I got to the hospital just as the sun was rising. My mother was in the waiting room, small and fragile, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her. When she saw me, she stood up. And for the first time in 22 years, I hugged her. She felt so small in my arms. So breakable. I'm here, I whispered. I'm here. She cried into my shoulder, and I held her, this woman who had failed me, who had hurt me, who had finally, too late, tried to make it right. We buried my father a week later. It was a small service. Some people from their church. A few neighbors. Carl came. He sat in the back. I sat in the front row, next to my mother. When it was over, when everyone had left, my mother and I stood at the grave. He loved you, she said quietly. He just didn't know how to show it. I know, I said. And I did. I understand now that love and pride and fear can twist people into unrecognizable shapes. What happens now? She asked. With the house. I looked at her. What do you want to happen? I want to stay, she said. If that's okay. I want to stay in our home. In your home. It's yours, I said. I'm signing it over to you. No rent. No lease. It's yours. Free and clear. Her eyes went wide. Naomi, you can't. I can, I said. And I am. You'll never have to worry about losing it again. She started to cry again. Why? After everything we did. Because you're my mother, I said. And because holding on to anger is exhausting. And because I don't want to carry it anymore. She hugged me, and this time, I hugged her back. That was 3 years ago. My mother still lives in the house. I visit once a month. We have dinner. We talk. We're not close, not the way mothers and daughters in movies are, but we're something. She tells people about me now. Proudly. She shows them the photo on the mantle. She tells them I own a successful company, that I'm doing well. And sometimes, late at night, she texts me, I'm proud of you. Just that. 3 words. And every time, I text back, thank you. Because I am who I am not because of them, but in spite of them. I survived being disowned. I survived being erased. And I built a life that no one can take away from me. Not even the people who tried. My name is Naomi, and I'm 42 years old now. I still run my company. I still live in Chicago. I still have the condo with the view of the skyline. But I'm not alone anymore. I let people in. I have friends. Real ones. I even started dating someone, a kind man who doesn't care about my past, only my present. And I have my mother. She's 82 now. Her health is declining. I hired a full-time caregiver for her last year. I pay for everything. Her medical bills. Her medications. Her care. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Because somewhere along the way, revenge stopped being the point. Survival became the point. Thriving became the point. And showing the people who hurt you that they didn't break you, that became the point. My parents disowned me for being irresponsible. They said I'd fail. They said I'd never amount to anything. And for 20 years, I carried that rejection like a scar. But in the end, I didn't just survive their cruelty. I became the person they needed most. And that, more than any revenge, more than any punishment, is the greatest victory of all. If you've ever been told you're not good enough, if you've ever been underestimated or thrown away by the people who were supposed to love you, I want you to know something. You don't need their approval to succeed. You don't need their validation to be worthy. You just need to survive. And then, when you've built something they can't ignore, you get to decide what happens next. Forgiveness or distance. Grace or boundaries. The choice is yours. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, have you ever had to prove yourself to people who doubted you? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, remember, the best revenge is becoming someone they can't erase.